right. My name is Alex Mufson. Thank you so much to Pineapple for hosting this event. It's just so much fun to have everyone in one place. I am a licensed clinical social worker, and I'm also an intentionality coach. And I find that I am often talking to individual clients about intentional dating and defining needs in relationship rather than just dating, the person who happens to swipe for you. And this is a very exciting day today because I've never been able to present this to a large group before. So I'm excited, and I would really welcome your engagement in the Q&A in the chat box. I will open it up at the end for more conversation, but I would love to hear from you along the way. And we will see what you all have to say at the end. So the biggest part of looking for relationships is often that we don't define ourselves in that moment. We're thinking that we're looking for someone to love us, which is a lovely sentiment, but also not locating ourselves and our own needs and our own boundaries and our own hopes and dreams for who we are in that process. And right now, a lot of dating occurs, or matching occurs online. And so I'm going to take us through the process actually that I used for myself the last time I was single a few years ago to match and find a partner. And so you'll see a lot of personal details as we get further along to try to share with you what has worked for me and many, many of my clients. So we're trying to get to the next slide. There we go. So we have to start from the past. I invite you all to think about your old relationships. Some of us have relationships that worked really well, and for whatever reason, they ran their course. Some of us, including myself, have nightmare ends to relationships, and we're very clear on what didn't work. It's important at the start of this process to really think deeply about if you've had a relationship that actually you would want to be in again. And that seems like a very simple question, but we grow and we change as individuals. And it's not always what maybe even was a great relationship for you at 20, very well might not be one at 30 or at 40 or at 50. And that's okay. It doesn't have to take away from the love or positive experiences you might have had in the past. It also doesn't mean that you're looking for that again. We grow, we change, and we want different partnerships in our lives. It's also important to note that bonding and attachment are not the same as romantic love. Sometimes they can coexist, which is wonderful. Sometimes we don't want them to coexist. That's also wonderful. Bonding and attachment often look like feeling really stable and predictable and safe. That can align with being healthy. Often we hope that it does in whatever that looks like, but it doesn't have to. Sometimes those feelings of predictability and protection actually keep us in unhealthy relationships longer than we would otherwise, because sort of what we know and what we feel safe in is keeping us in something that is unhealthy or not letting us sort of move into a new version of ourselves. Romantic love, though, is inherently vulnerable. And the healthy risk in romantic love is that risk that you do care deeply and you love someone. And whether that looks like monogamy or poly or whatever that might look like, there is some risk in being vulnerable enough to care for someone deeply. And so a lot of the time, the bonding and attachment that we feel sometimes in healthy, sometimes in unhealthy relationships can feel at odds with the risk that it takes to have a deep romantic love that requires that vulnerability of self. And so it's important to take a look at what you're looking for, what you've had before, and what you'd like to produce and manifest in your future relationships. Because if you can't say with certainty what you're looking for, you will likely not find it because you haven't defined it. Great. So it's all about starting with yourself. So I think to myself, who am I and what parts of myself do I care to grow? when defining ourselves, it doesn't just look like, okay, this is who I am today. It looks about like where I'm going. And we get to be intentional about that. We get to define that. And that's often a missing piece in relationships because we're looking at who has expressed interest and who likes us. Maybe that's convenience. Maybe that's for the sort of validation buzz that you get off of someone pursuing you. But we're not always saying, this is what I want, and this is who I am in the moment, and this is who I care to be in my future. Are you, as my potential partner or date or whatever you're looking for, are you going to add that to my life? So it's about who you are and then what you want and where you want to go. So I would suggest if you're sort of considering dating or considering opening yourself up to new partnerships or any sort of love, sitting down and writing first all the things that you love about yourself. And that can actually be pretty tricky. And if you find that that is where you're stuck, that's probably where you need to be in that moment. So all the things you love about yourself doesn't just look like, I love my hair, I'm having a good hair day. It's like deeply, what do I love about myself that may or may not align with the feedback that I've gotten? I know for me, a lot of the things that I love the most about myself, I've had previous partners who would have said that those were the most challenging parts about me. And that's okay. They don't have to want a partner that loves the same things about myself that I love about myself, but I get to define what sort of partner I have and if they are bringing and elevating the parts of myself that I care to elevate. So then you think about your hopes. Hopes can look like everything from career to identity to future goals, and write those down. Make them real, make them something that you can look back upon, and make sure you're exploring why you want it. Because a lot of the time our hopes are inadvertently defined by what someone else has told us that we should be, or who we should be, or why we should live the way that we live. And if you can really sit down and define for yourself why the hopes you have are your hopes, you're likely going to get clear with yourself about what are yours and what are society's and what are that old partner and what were your parents and all the voices that we have, whether they are present in our lives or in our past, can all drown out what we're really looking for. And I would recommend thinking deeply about who you want to be in 5 years, because a lot of the time when we make sort of like big long-term goals, maybe they're career or financial, which is awesome. I'm 100% in favor of goal setting for that sort of thing. But who we want to be is an identity. What parts of you do you want to grow? What do you care to elevate in yourself? And maybe that is a part of yourself that's been kept small for some reason and that you hope to grow. Maybe it's a new part of yourself that you've never had as a primary focus before. Maybe it's making space for whatever it is that you want to grow into. We can't look into the future with any sort of guarantees, but we can certainly be intentional about what we're trying to accomplish with our lives. Then what will get you there? So this is another part that I recommend putting down on paper. So all the qualities in a partner that would support you getting to where you want to go. This is about taking partnership and saying, this is another aspect of my life that can support and elevate. So maybe I want a serious monogamous partnership. Maybe I want a serious poly relationship. Maybe I want many. It doesn't, that part is for you to define what a partner or what someone else around you in an intimate fashion looks like. But you get to define even more so what qualities would help you add to your life. So I call with my clients, we call it a fucking manifesto. And it's important that this is both a living document and hard and fast. So if you're writing one today, your fucking manifesto might have some things that maybe 5 years from now, you will not keep on that document. Maybe those are hard and fast forever. It should be relative to where you are in your growth. And in the next slide, I'm going to get vulnerable and real. I'm going to show you mine because I still have it, and it will be on every device, phone that I have, probably the rest of my life, because I'm regularly looking at it, and I'm in a loving, happy partnership that I believe elevates me, and I still look at it regularly to make sure that, one, what I wanted is still being met, and two, that I still want those same things. So here we go. So there are some keys to a good manifesto. So it should be values driven. And if you can look, I think you guys will be able to see if you can't write in the chat, and I'll read more of them. But things like, active, ambitious, honest, can see beyond his own experience, is not afraid, mentally stable, not focused on substances, pursues me as much as I pursue him, can perceive me accurately, live in the sort of place that I want to live, want the sort of community that I want. So this is values driven in a way that addresses core beliefs of that person and needs that they might have and goals. This is deeply character driven. And that is something that we don't always talk enough about when we're dating. A lot of the time when I ask, say, a client that I'm working with to write their first manifesto, I get one back that is just maybe 4 or 5 things. And a lot of the time they are really specific, like height or financial status or car or something really specific, but also not related to character. So when I write on this slide, very specific, yet entirely generalizable, that can be confusing. And I think this is where a lot of people struggle in dating, is we're talking about qualities that this person might be a cis man with red hair and he has these qualities, might be a trans woman with blonde hair that has these qualities, but these qualities are still inherent to who they are, not whether they're 6 feet tall and wealthy or not. So I would urge you to look through this list and think about the list that maybe you have in your head. You're welcome to maybe write in the chat or questions if you have them, like, is this a character trait? Is this based on an external marker? But this is where refer back to that original list that I've asked you to make about yourself and what you're trying to elevate is really, really, really important. Because if we're not thinking about who we are and what we want to elevate, it will be very difficult to come up with a values-driven manifesto. So an example would be, well, there's a few in here that are solid examples to me. Does not require me to be strong. That's on the first part of the list. That was a really important piece to me, not because I don't want to be strong. I feel like I'm a very strong person and I'm very clear, but I wanted someone else that was as clear and had their life together in a way that I didn't have to be strong in order to be with them. And that was really hard for me to identify, because being strong is a huge part of my identity. And being able to handle crisis and help people and be compassionate is really important to me. But do I want in my partnership to be required to be in that space that I am professionally and I am with many of my friends all the time? And when I thought about that deeply, I thought, no, that's not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for someone who can really, move forward with me and has their own life and their own momentum. I think I might have even put the word momentum somewhere. I can't remember. Something else that was really important to me is, that I could stand out in the relationship, but not kind of produce that, again, momentum. I don't want to be the engine in our life. I wanted someone moving with me. So it's important, and I'm dwelling on this because these are the sorts of things that are not, they're not specific to a type of person. They're not specific to an aesthetic or a social marker, but they are very specific to what I want and require in a partnership. And those can be really confusing, and feel free to write in the chat if you need any support with kind of teasing this out a little bit. So once you have your manifesto, then it comes down to writing an online profile. I think there's some really important things to consider here. First of all, what platform you're using is just as important as where you're going to meet someone in person. Meeting someone in a place that's surrounded by people who align with your values and who you want to be, again, refer back to that first list, is really, really important. I think that later in the day, I'm lucky enough to be moderating a panel about red flags in relationships specific to people who work in the sex work industry. And I think this one is really important as far as what you're disclosing, where you're disclosing it, and why. That can be specific, whether or not you're in the sex work industry. That's important. You want to be accurate. You want to get to the point, and you don't want to please everyone, because if you please everyone, you're probably not, again, being specific about what you're looking for. So think about what platform you're on and why people might choose that platform. So I've had a lot of cis women tell me that they have had success on Bumble because they find it really comforting that on Bumble, if you're marked as a cis woman, you're the one who's initiating the first contact. And that feels safe to them, because then if they are trying to find a partnership with a cis man, they feel like the people that are signing up for that are self-selecting and want that sort of rule in and rule out. That's going to look different for everyone. I was very specific in how I worded that, because that might not align with your dating goals, which is 100% okay, but the platforms aren't neutral. And this is where it's important to remember that we have agency in where we're putting our emotional, physical energy. So just the same as if you have, I don't know, what's a silly example? If you have no interest in motorcycles, but you continue to go and hang out at a biker bar in order to find a date, you're probably in the wrong pool of people. And that is going to be very frustrating, because you actually don't really want to ride motorcycles, and everyone that you meet does. And that's a problem. So if you're looking for casual relationship that is a very specific type of relationship, do your research and find the platform that other people are using for that sort of relationship. If you're looking for something really serious with a very certain type of person, research, find what platform works well for that. Then be very specific. So rule ins and rule outs are right on your profile. This is where I see a lot of people do the opposite. They open up their profile hoping that if they look cute and have a few emojis, that then lots and lots of people will swipe on them, and then they'll have the most choices. And I understand that logic. That logic makes sense to me. But the problem with that logic is you actually don't want to be in a relationship with everyone. You want to be in a very specific type of relationship that suits all the needs that you've defined in the earlier steps. So a rule in might be really basic. I'm looking for a serious relationship and I like the outdoors. Those are really basic rule ins. Rule outs might be I'm not into substances and I don't drink. Looking for someone who will be sober with me. These are rule ins, and rule outs are and should be the bulk of your profile. When someone is like swiping through, you want as many people to opt out of going on a date with you as possible. And that seems totally counterintuitive, but we are all busy and we all have limited emotional energy. So being really open to letting people self-select will actually support you in getting what you want, meeting your needs, and having more satisfaction in your life in the future. This one can be really painful for a lot of people to do. And I think depending on your identity, a lot of us have been taught that we should please everyone. And a lot of us have shame and baggage in our lives for whatever reason that makes the need for validation from an external source feel really important and really scary to not have. And if we right off the bat rule in and rule out other people and let people self-select and say, I do not need to match with every person that's on this platform, that in itself can be really vulnerable. That's believing that you are enough, just who you are and what you're looking for is enough, and it's okay and it's fair, and you don't need to have that superficial connection with everyone. Accurate photos are really important, and this is less about your aesthetic and like, are you attractive or not, and more about representing who you are for people to love, because you want people ruling in and ruling out again. And if you are someone who maybe has a couple shots in full makeup for work or for any other reason, and yet in real life you never ever wear makeup, that's fine and awesome, and you probably look amazing in those photos. And are you going to be wearing makeup every time you see this person? Like, the beauty of online profiles and online dating is we actually get a little heads up on if we're going to be compatible with this other person. So accurate photos can go a long way. And there is no body that will not have another body that will love them. And so it's really important to own who you are and show everyone that this is who I am, this is what you're going to see when we meet in person. And none of us are wasting our time trying to sort of put on a show when we're looking for something specific. That teaches the algorithm. And this is where it gets kind of cold. A lot of this is sort of cold because we have to remember that just like the biker bar wasn't neutral, it's not a neutral place, because they've already self-selected in their advertising and what they've put on, the walls and the music that they're playing. It's all very calculated to have a certain type of response. Dating platforms are the same. And a lot of the time it's easy to get wrapped into the idea that a dating platform, let's say Bumble or Tinder or Hinge or any millions of others that there are, is neutral. And it's not. It is actually putting you in a pool of people based on the content that you teach it. So your photos, your profile keywords, the questions that you choose to answer, questions that you choose to leave blank, are putting you in a pool of people. And a lot of people say, Alex, that's really weird. I want to see everyone. And I get it. And it can actually be very useful. I know I was like super busy when I was dating, and I didn't really like have a ton of interest in going on a lot of bad dates. So I was very, very specific with the algorithm. Every move you make on one of these profile or platforms, the bigger they are, usually the more specific their algorithms are written, because they have to weed through more people. Every move you make is teaching the algorithm something. So if you write certain words in your profile, or you leave your profile blank, you go in different pools of people. If you post certain types of photos, you will go in a different pool of people. If you hit that you absolutely want children, you hit a certain religion, you're going to go in a certain pool of people. And that is because the algorithms have been taught by the people that made them that that's who you're likely to like. And so every time you add to your profile, adjust your profile, and swipe, you must remember that you're teaching the algorithm your needs. So I swipe with no mercy. Like if you can't be bothered to write a thoughtful profile, no. If you add something that I have like an immediate response to that isn't 100%, yeah, I'm interested, no. And that can, again, be a very vulnerable feeling because you're like, well, what if that was the person, but they don't write very well? Or what if that was the person and that's a bad picture? And I would argue, and my clients that have had success with this would say life is too short to be banking on that. There are so many people, and these algorithms are so sophisticated that this is a beautiful way to go on less bad dates. You might not fall in love with the first person that you meet, but you'll go on less bad dates. So teach the algorithm, be empowered, that when you are moving, you are teaching Tinder or Bumble or whatever, you're teaching them, okay, this is what I like, this is who I am, and this is how I'm existing on this platform. Please put me in the right pool of people. I would say for the most part, if you do all of these things, you end up having a more positive experience on a dating app because the platform has learned you. So, for instance, here is what I would call a good profile. He doesn't give away a ton of super personal information, but you get a really clear rule in of what he wants. He's looking for a cool hiking outdoors partner, straightforward and honest, not into drama, like right there. He's making it clear what kind of relationship he's looking for. He has some things that he does like doing that are like specific enough that I know, yeah, I'm gonna like this person, or no, we have nothing in common. He mentions that he's not into the bar and club scene or social media. So those are pretty large rule outs right there. And he answered a lot of questions at the bottom. Some important ones to look at are, doesn't want kids. He says never to all the substances. And he says he's active, and he mentions that he's agnostic. Like all of this is super important because even without looking at photos, you get a pretty clear sense of who this person is. He uses, descriptive words like simple living. There's a lot to work with in a short profile. Again, rule ins, rule outs, what he's looking for, what he doesn't like. That's really, really concise and well done. So now you've matched. So you've been swiping mercilessly. You don't want everyone you swipe at, you're like feeling like, yeah, I want to have a conversation with this person. You get to most platforms will then have you direct messaging in some way. Watch how that goes, because you've already hopefully weeded out a ton of people before you downloaded the app, because you defined your own needs, you were intentional about which app you chose, then you downloaded the app, then you put yourself in the right pool of people, you've narrowed it down again, then you've created your profile, so not everyone's swiping on you, and now you've gotten to the point where you've swiped with intention. The people that you've matched might have a little potential. What do the first messages look like? And this might sound crazy, but like first 5 to 10 messages, I would say I'm pretty hardcore. I would say first 3 to 5, but I'll give you 10 as you learn. You're going to eliminate a huge amount of people just in that process. So does the first message ask a question? Asking a question or referring to your profile, like, hey, like, cool dogs in your profile, what breeds are they? Like, that's not super personal, but it's still like they looked at your profile, they swiped on you because they were interested in something. That is incredibly important. It's still specific, so they're asking specific questions and then working to carry on a conversation. So again, I'm super hardcore, but you get like one LOL answer, maybe, where there's no follow-up. Like LOL and then a follow-up, cool. But if you just say ha or okay, and you drop the conversation, it's not my job to pick up that conversation and to carry it. That is teaching me your level of engagement right there. Even if you want just a casual dating experience, you want someone who also wants that experience and isn't like burdened by chatting with you. You're on that dating platform for a reason. You're looking for a relationship. You showed up at this webinar, so clearly something spoke to you about it. So that is really, really important. I find that a lot of people feel a lot of guilt about saying that's not good enough, because it's like, well, I don't know, maybe they were busy. You should remember, nothing's about you at that point. They don't know you yet. They've never met you. It's all about their interest and level of involvement in their own life. It might be true that all they said was LOL and then disappeared for 10 days because something crazy happened in their life. I have a lot of empathy for that, and they're not in the same space that you're in. If they come back and they reinitiate and that's a totally different experience, maybe we'll think about it. But you have to act not on what could be and potential of someone that you don't even know, but act on the information that you're being given. So someone who wants to have a conversation will have a conversation. Someone who wants to keep talking to you will keep talking to you. Now, the flip side of that is you have to keep up your end of the bargain. So if you're the person who says, haha, and then disappears for 5 days, you're probably not going to be pursued if you're looking for, say, a serious relationship by someone else who's looking for a serious relationship, because they're looking for someone who is engaging. So you're watching who's doing more work and why. If you're doing all the work, bye. Like that's an indicator of what the relationship could be. And unless on your list, way back when you wrote your fucking manifesto, you wrote to yourself that you want to carry the weight of a relationship because you like doing all of the emotional labor. No, if you wrote that, then that would probably be the perfect person for you. But very few of us write that when we're really intentional about defining our needs. And then follow up. I really like when someone says, like, I'm going to be busy for the next few days, but then I'll touch back in, and then they do. Or, hey, do you want to talk tomorrow? Or, hey, we've been talking for a few days. If you'd like to follow up, here is my phone number so we can get off the platform. Something really like clear and direct. That will likely align with the profile. So if you look at Chris's profile here, he even says thanks in his profile. It's very polite, very formal. He wrapped it up as if he was talking directly to someone. You're likely going to see the same behavior in an in-person conversation. Hey, I'm going to be out of service for a couple of days. I will text you, and then text you. If you have any question about whether or not someone is into the conversation that you've been putting time into, let the conversation come to a natural end, whatever that is, and then see if they reinitiate. Like, it's not a game. It's just saying like, oh, I was questioning if this person's interested, but yeah, I can see that they are. They're offering, they're asking specific questions, they're following up. Don't overthink it. If someone is interested, they will show up. And that is Chris, and that is me. That is the profile that I swiped on when I met my partner a number of years ago. And we are actually now both, we had so much in common. He's a coach that works on substances and career changes and relationships, and I am a social worker. We were a really good match, and we have started this whole business together our whole life. We live in Montana. That's a picture of kind of our backyard. And Sage Intent Collective is what we produced out of our partnership, and it continues to align who we are. And when we reflect on, we actually have our first conversation stored, and it's pretty clear within 5 texts that this is a really good match. And I have other conversations saved that are not that clear. So, and we both took a similar approach, though we did not know each other at the time. So if you just, in case you want to check us out, that's our website. We also have an Instagram. I support Pineapple as much as I can and would love to see all of you doing coaching and therapy. And if there are any questions, I would love to hear them. I left a little bit of time for that. Any questions, follow up? Quiet crowd. That is okay. If you come up with something later, you want to chat, you can find me. You can get in touch with me at sageintentcollective.com, at Sage Intent Collective on Instagram. And I will be back in a few hours talking to a wide range of panelists on red flags in relationships. So I hope that I get to see you then. Thank you so much. Looks like there's still no questions. So no conversation today.
Thank you so much, Alex. That was so interesting.
Yeah. Okay, good.
I just want to say that I was listening, and I just got back from a birthday party a few days ago, and I was telling everyone about my template. And everyone was like, yeah, but isn't that so stale? Isn't that so rigid? Yeah. Isn't that so cold? Is it too cold though? Is it too cold to just, what's your opinion on?
So when you say your template, do you mean what you're using on your profiles?
No, like literally I have a spreadsheet with what I need, what my needs are, what I can give, what I want, what I'm expecting.
I call it a fucking manifesto because people find that more comfortable to call, but I think that's exactly what you need, because that's putting yourself first. And it's defining who you are and not just saying, oh, am I lucky enough to find someone that happens to fill my needs? Otherwise, we're just looking for who's pursuing us. And I think so many of us are taught in relationships that it's whoever likes us. We should be really excited that someone likes us. Yeah, and that's not true.
It's absolutely not true. Yeah. I love that because I've experienced I don't want to make this into a personal thing, but I think like the people that are listening could just jump in. That I've seen this a lot, even with my Tinder, with the different apps, dating apps that I've been using. I was like, I'm gonna put some sexier photos because this is gonna make more people swipe. And then I was looking at the conversation and all the matches, and I was like, I don't want to talk to this person.
Right.
Like, why do I even want to do that? I don't want to talk to this person. Who is this person?
Yeah. Well, and there's a lot of like confidence that it takes to say, I actually don't want to be liked by everyone. And I feel very secure in that there are certain people that I'm very pleased when they don't like me. And I want to just not go on dates with them. Like, I don't want to chat with them, and I don't want to go on dates with them. But I have to be first investing in myself and saying, like, I can define myself in a way that I'm comfortable with. And I can say, like, I'm enough in just that moment. Like, I'm enough. And if you don't like me, that is okay. There's plenty more people out there.
How do you deal with how do you encourage people to deal with the self-doubt that comes from time to time? Because at one point we are like, yes, we're enough, fuck everyone, we're good, we're strong enough, but then there are a few days they're like, I'm horrible. How do we deal with that?
Well, I would say, first of all, and this is like obviously why Pineapple exists, have your own support network, whether that's a coach or a therapist or someone that can support you with how to create a toolbox for those days. I would also recommend staying off your dating apps on those days, because we're not going to make our best choices on your down day. And there's like 8 million reasons why you have a down day. Sometimes your mom was a real jerk to you. Sometimes you're not feeling well. Sometimes you had a bad day at work. But that's probably when you're going to look for external validation. And you might end up on a date with someone that you would never in a calm moment have gone on a date with, because you jumped on, Tinder or Bumble to like chill out and make yourself feel better. Now, that doesn't mean, I think it's a kind of a fallacy that you have to be like perfect and all together and ready when you get into a relationship. No, you just have to want to be in a relationship to get in a relationship.
I believe that. I believe that. What happens in tell me your experience of bad dates, because you said you've met Chris, you're this, and it's so wonderful. It speaks to me. I really relate. I'm going through something like that right now. And I'm like, yes, the universe is talking to me, Alex. It's awesome.
Okay. Awesome. Well, I should say the coolest part of this story that I didn't know if we'd have lots of questions, so I didn't want to tell it. But I actually wrote that manifesto that I showed you all on a plane. So I was above the earth, and I wrote it. And when I landed, I started swiping, and I swiped with Chris that day. And that's like a little crazy, but also a little wonderful. He does not like it when I say that I manifested him. He's like, I existed before.
But no. Look, if a tree falls into the forest, nobody's there to hear it. Did it fall or not?
Yeah. So I wrote that list above, and yeah, I mean, I had gone on some good dates. I think the worst date I went on was one that was very reinforcing to me. I actually was talking to someone on a plane, just like chatting, and he was like, hey, I have a friend that I would love to set you up with. I think you'd make a really good couple. And I was like, I'm single, whatever, like, sure. And went on a date, and it was horrible. And it was like literally take my eyeballs out, horrible. And I realized that that was the date that I was the least intentional about, right? Like I let someone else tell me that that was a good idea. And I let someone else say, oh, I see you. I see the parts of you that I've liked talking to on the plane. I'm going to match someone with that. And it didn't align at all with what I was trying to look for in a date. It didn't align at all with what I was trying to make bigger in myself.
But then how did the person that you met on the, we're doing therapy here. How did the person that you met on the plane, how get that perception of you?
Well, I mean, what do you talk about on a plane, right? Like he knew what I did for a living. He, on a superficial level, he, knew where I lived because we were flying to the same place. Like he had all these superficial markers, which was like, I'm a therapist who lives in Montana and likes the outdoors and had been traveling. I think I had been in LA or something. Like I was doing something fun. And now that you're asking me the questions, I'm trying to remember. I was doing something like odd and creative. I think I was working on a movie or something. And he was like, oh, that's so interesting. So all of these things that on a superficial level are attractive in a certain way. And then I come and find this person that he sets me up on that was also a therapist, also worked with young people. I was working with teenagers at the time. He had all these similar markers to me. He had none of the like personality traits or none of the like deeper stuff that I have, because I don't share that with a person on a plane, right? And I didn't like, it was at the very end that this guy was like, hey, can I set you up? So that's where this intentional dating idea comes from, is like, then when that was a different plane than when I had met Chris, but when I was really intentional about why I'm swiping, because I had written that list that you all saw before, then I was able to swipe and say, no, that doesn't fit. Yes, that fits. No, that doesn't fit. So the fact that you have a spreadsheet for that, I'm like, what a badass. That's so great.
2 sheets, 4 columns, each sheet. It's insane. It always, it's something like what I saw. There's one thing that I have in it is like what I've done in my previous relationships, and I noticed the pattern, and I've noticed the things that got there, and then it's like what I noticed in relationships around me.
Yep, that's really good.
Yeah,
so it's that's like that what works and what doesn't part.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
That's so important. And I think you're also going back to where, yes, you want a list that is specific, but also generalizable. I like to do both of those at once, because my partner, who you see in the photos, he actually said, before he had really read the list, he said, well, what if someone doesn't meet all of them? Like, you can't look for perfection. And I said, well, that's not true. You meet all of them. And then I pulled out my list, and it's because none of them are like, I was like, which of these here, maybe I can even, I don't know how to do it, but which of these am I willing to give up? And I was like, do I give up the smart part? Do I give up the, thoughtful part? Do I give up the gratitude? Like, none of these I'm willing to give up. Now, if I had one that said 6 feet tall, he's 5'10", like, maybe that would be one that I should be willing to give up, because that actually doesn't say a lot about our partnership. But there's not one thing on this list that I think is unreasonable to expect of someone.
Tell me, I see on this list, I need more explanation on this.
Okay.
What does is able to change my mind mean?
that one was really important to me because I have found that I can't really see anyone but you, but I tend to be a very bold person. And when I feel like I know something, I know it, but I am willing to shift my thought process if someone is compelling and has another idea that I find better than the one I have. But they can't just be like, oh, well, have you ever considered, like, I don't know, they have to be compelling and researched and thoughtful and all of these things that I am too, and bold enough to say, oh, there's this really confident person. And for me, I'm a cis woman, and often cis men, who are the people that I'm interested in dating, get a little weird around a woman that is super solid about these things. And so I wanted a man that thought that that was super cool, but could have a lively debate. And at the end, I might be like, I think he was right. Like, that's really important to me, because most people are either super passive with someone like me, or they just don't like it. They're like, she's not willing to change her mind. And so that was really important to me. And I'm glad that you saw that one.
Yeah, that, again, I have my own, I have my own,
Yeah.
I have my own fucking manifesto.
Yes. Good.
So
Good.
I just love is that there are, there are so the important core beliefs, because in a partnership of any way it is, I don't think it's very important that you have the same hobbies, let's say,
No.
the same things. It's the principles, the solid
Mm-hmm.
things that keep you together. When push
Mm-hmm.
comes to shove, you need to know that
Yeah.
you can rely on that person, that he's
Yep.
ambitious, that he's already happy. I love that you
Mm-hmm.
said content. He's
Mm-hmm.
already happy. He doesn't need you to make him
Mm-hmm.
happy. He doesn't.
I wanted someone that if I broke up with them would be fine. And I
Mhm.
know that not a lot of people think like that. They're like, I want them to be, but like, I, I'm fine. I've had old partnerships end, and I'm fine. And I would be sad if this one ended, but I would be fine. And I wanted someone who was the same. That was important to me, because I'm kind of a monogamy type person, and I like having my one person. Like, I don't go anywhere without my dogs even. So I'm like, I like that level of commitment, but I'm also like, if you're not into it, I'll be
But
fine.
that's about being self-sufficient and
Mm-hmm,
self-confident and trusting that whatever, I mean, you can trust someone
mm-hmm.
100%. You just trust that you're going to be okay after they leave.
Exactly. So I wanted someone that felt the same, because I think otherwise, shame eats away at people. If they feel like they're not good enough for a relationship, they will self-sabotage it. And
Mhm.
that was really important to me. And that's where, if you notice, a lot of these, where it does get a little more specific, is at the very end, is I do talk about the sort of community that I want to build. And I was very thoughtful when I wrote this and said, like, I don't mind if someone wants to live somewhere else, and I don't mind, but I do like having these components of a
Mhm.
community. And I also wanted someone that was like on my team. So the family stuff, like I wanted someone
Yeah.
on my team. I didn't want it to be like, the yucky mother-in-law trying to like steal her son back. That just wasn't what I was into. So those things are fairly specific, but they're also values driven. Anyone that I matched with, no matter what they look like or what they did for a living, or if they had a lot of money or no money at all, could fulfill all of these things.
Of course.
um, and they could do
I,
it
I, I
well.
I see there's no financial stability or something like that, but you do have here the principles that will ensure that he is going to be, or
Mhm.
your relationship, like
Yeah,
ambitious, like
yeah,
those are things that will help the.
yeah. They're values that tend to lead to someone who is
Mhm.
competent. But yeah, I mean, I got my own money. I wasn't worried about that, and frankly, don't want to share it. So that wasn't. It was like, you do what you want to do, but because I don't really care if someone is ambitious and thoughtful and caring and striving to be better and forward thinking, and for whatever reason they're willing to live on not a lot of money, as long as they'll move into my house that I think is pretty cool, we're good. Like, you can work for free, I don't care. Like, that's not my business, as long as you're employing all of those values. Now, if you're not working, or you're making very little money because you're, not caring or not forward thinking or not passionate about anything, that's actually the deal breaker for me. That won't be for everyone. A lot of people have different relationships with, say, financial stability and what they want in a partnership. Um, and that can look different for everyone. For me, I had come out of a partnership that was very like 50-50 and everything. And it was scary to me when he like was kind of crazy and left. And I was like, oh man, I don't like that feeling financially. And so I was like, I felt more emotionally vulnerable in the relationship that you guys are hearing about than I did in the one that was financially more vulnerable. But I realized that financially, if I knew that I had my own money and I was fine, I was actually able to be more emotionally available. That's personal, but that's the depth of what I'm thinking about in this. So I didn't really care if the guy had a lot of money or not. I cared that I was able to show up as my best self. So right where it says, I don't have to be strong, I also wanted someone that was humble and could change his mind as much as he could change my mind. Like I wanted both.
This is so beautiful. It doesn't kill the romance, does it though?
No, to me, it actually made me feel like there was a lot more romance. I felt like in previous relationships where I was required to be strong, or I felt like I was the momentum, because my personality right on the screen is pretty much my personality all the time. So it's easy for me to get in a situation where perhaps I'm the momentum and I'm the energy, because I've always got another plan and I've always got another list of like, this is what I want, let's go get it. And I actually find that there's not a lot of romance to be had when you're like assigning things to your partner, when you're like, hey, let's get more financially stable. Hey, let's do this together. Hey, like that doesn't feel good at all. You want someone who's like, we're going to do this. Like, let's do it.
That's amazing. Alex, it has been a pleasure. I can't wait for your roundtable in a bit.
Thank you so much for jumping in. I want to open it up one more. I mean, we kind of just had a live discussion, but if there's anyone watching that wants to pop in, no? Okay, everyone's said this is a vulnerable topic. So I understand just wanting to watch. But you guys can reach out to me on Instagram, Sage Intent Collective, or on that website that is here. I'll put it up one more time in case you guys have questions. Reach out. I'm actually in the process of developing this in an interactive online course that will be like a 6-week long, and I really want feedback. So you guys should totally email me or DM me with any feedback or ideas, stuff you wanted to hear more about, so I can make sure that I do a better job.